All right, thank you. First up is open forum, and we do not have anyone up for that tonight. Next is presentations, which we also do not have. And then we have approve agenda. Council members may add items to the agenda for discussion purposes or staff direction only. The council will not normally take official action on items added to the agenda. Does anyone have anything to add?
Nope.
All right. Can I get a motion?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. Next up is consent agenda. These items are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed elsewhere on the agenda. Anyone have anything to pull?
Not me.
No. Okay. Can I get a motion for that?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. We have no public hearings tonight, so we'll move on to general business. First up is 7.1, consideration of a site plan application by Bader Companies for proposed multifamily development at 21601 John Deere Lane. Who's doing this one?
Madam Mayor and council members, the item before you, as mentioned, is related to the redevelopment of the property at 21601 John Deere Lane, more commonly referred to as the Willis Trucking property, into a multifamily development. A little background on the proposal in front of you tonight. Last year, the Planning Commission and City Council reviewed a concept plan, generally in support of the development, with some comments primarily focused on traffic, and a traffic study since that point has been completed and was submitted corresponding with the site plan application, which I do have a future slide related to the traffic study. Generally, it's consistent with what you saw in the past from that concept plan. Much of the form and function of how the building sits on the property has remained the same number of units. Since that time, there's also a few grants that have been awarded to the project, including a grant from DEED from their redevelopment and contamination cleanup programs, as well as Hennepin County from their environmental response fund. So both of those, all three of those go into the actual cleanup of the development site itself. This site and its timing corresponded well with our overall Main Street master plan process. This site plan was kind of incorporated into it. And I will also note that it also corresponded well with past master plans, which all showed the site as a multifamily site for those previous versions. A little on the property itself. The owner is currently Willis Enterprise. They were the owner operator that operated the site as a heavy truck repair and service location. There's also tire sales that took place via Hoosier Tires at this property. The developer is a combination of two, both Bader and Ebert. There are representatives from both entities here tonight, should you have questions for the developer. The total size for the property, it's currently 2 parcels, is combined at 4.61 acres. It is zoned downtown mixed use and guided the same. The downtown mixed use zoning is a mixture of commercial and residential uses primarily. The current use, as mentioned, was heavy truck repair and service. This would be considered a grandfathered use or a non-conforming use based on its current operations. The proposed use is 181 units of market rate or luxury multifamily. Some of the adjacent uses include commercial/industrial to the east, and I put industrial there for the Lensworks building that's in between this site and the Duffy development site. To the north is a proposed Civic Campus site. To the south is railroad, and then across the railroad tracks is industrial. That property is also grandfathered and is guided in our comprehensive plan as high density residential. And then to the west is industrial, but also grandfathered use and guided as multifamily in different master plans or residential and master plans. A little on the proposed site plan. It's 181 units total. I have a breakdown in the next slide showing the different types of units. 3 stories in height, which is approximately 31 feet in total height, which is well below the maximum height limitations for the downtown zoning district. Overall is an H shape with the parking along the edges, underground parking, a pool and clubhouse and other amenity features, trail connection along the John Deere lane frontage. And then, as mentioned, there is some contamination based upon the past use of the site, which would have to be remediated as part of redevelopment. And then for the stormwater, it would have underground stormwater. A little on the zoning, this breaks down to about 39.3 units per acre. The downtown zoning district allows for up to 40, so it's within the range allowed by our zoning guidance. It meets all of our setback code limitations, but most of those are 0. Being the downtown, we have the smallest setback limitations, but it does exceed all of those limitations. As mentioned, it meets height. It is consistent with the past and current master planning efforts that we've done. And overall, based on the current conditions compared to the proposed conditions, there would be a reduction in total impervious surface. Looking at the parking and unit breakdown, this is very consistent with what you had saw at the concept level. So Alcove and Studio would account for approximately 40 of the units, a total of 70 units at 1 bedroom or 1 bedroom plus den, 62 units at 2 beds, and then 9 units at 3 beds for the total of 181. As part of this process and understanding a little more from the developer, we asked for a breakdown of what that equals as individual units and people within those units. So the anticipated average would be 1.8 persons per unit, so 326 individuals. It is denoted on the screen that this would be primarily adults, mostly because so many of the units are both either 1 bedroom or studio units. For the parking, there's 165 surface spaces that are proposed, as well as 209 enclosed spaces for a total of 374 total. This is above what we would require by code. Our code requires 2 to 1, one of which being enclosed. So with that, they would be at 362 required. So they're slightly above that. Particularly in the enclosed spaces section. As mentioned, they did complete a traffic study that was included in your packet for review. The assumption is a 2028 completion of the project, so this would be following Fletcher Bypass being open and open to the public. In total, there would be 1,124 daily trips, which is including both in and out trips. And as you'll see, they studied a few different intersections that would be the primary intersections corresponding to this development. Very minimal impacts to those intersections. Most are seeing a 1 to 2 second change based upon that. And I will also note the consultant who completed the traffic study is here if you do have specific questions related to that. There is one note on the last bullet point. The future potential John Deere to industrial connection was not included in the traffic study. So that would potentially further reduce the traffic volumes onto Main Street. But just to note, that was not a influencing factor in part of the numbers that you see for the intersections. For the landscaping, 38 total new trees would be planted, primarily focused on the John Deere lane corridor. This is really to kind of enhance the pedestrian feel for the John Deere corridor, which is a component of our master planning process, is creating a overall pedestrian corridor as this redevelopment continues to the west, and then some additional shrubs and grasses proposed along the edges of the building as well. So the architecture, and I have renderings on the next slide. This is very consistent with what you saw on the previous concept plan. So it's a mix of brick and fiber cement paneling. The brick really focused on the John Deere side, really trying to keep that character with the overall Main Street district of that brick feels, really focused on the pedestrian corridor or the public rights of way. So the second image down from the top would be looking at it from the front. So here are the kind of bigger renderings or more architectural renderings showing different angles of the building, with the top right being looking at it from the front, which would be very close to where if you were looking at it from the potential future police department angle. So a little bit on the downtown vision. So this has been part of past and current master plans and comprehensive plans, really seeking to redevelop some of the industrial uses away from Main Street, really trying to focus more of the potential uses that are more cohesive to a Main Street, bringing those in. Also removing substandard buildings and promoting environmental remediation. As part of this overall process, working with the developer, the building that is existing on site was deemed as substandard. Integration of housing to support and advance commercial viability on Main Street. Obviously, the thing that benefits commercial businesses the most is nearby individuals who would shop at those businesses or restaurants. So focusing on that piece. Then, as mentioned, a big component from the architectural standpoint in discussions with the developer was the incorporation of brick to really be cohesive with the varying different generations that have developed on Main Street. Brick has been one thing that's been consistent throughout. And then the incorporation of sidewalk connections for future pedestrian connectivity throughout the area. This development and site plan was reviewed at the Planning Commission at the February 2nd meeting. There was general support of the development with a clarifying question corresponding to where trash would be kept, which would be internal to the building and would be brought out at collection days, but otherwise would be within the enclosed garage. Following that discussion, they did unanimously recommend the site plan for approval to the City Council. They did provide an additional recommendation for up to 25 of the surface parking stalls to be removed and shown as proof of parking instead. This is not something that is written into the resolution, but should council want to go that route, that is the recommendation of the Planning Commission. But that would be pure discretion of the council. I know parking within the general area is a high topic, something that's been discussed a lot. So from a staff perspective, we didn't want to put that directly as a condition quite yet until getting council feedback. So there is a recommend action on your screen in front of you. With that, I can stand for any questions you have of staff. And as mentioned, there are numerous individuals from the developer who can answer any questions you have for them.
Brett, can you explain that proof of parking? What is that?
Yeah, let me go back to the site plan. That'd probably be the best way to show it. Let's see. You can see the little laser pointer on here. So what the proof of parking would be is essentially it shows that there is a potential to add it, but it wouldn't be built at the time of the development. So you see this very commonly with industrial developments, one especially on the speculative side, where our code may require a high number, but they build less than that, but show they have the area to add the additional parking should it be needed. So what the Planning Commission's recommendation was to look at that railroad side and see if some of those wouldn't be built at the time of the development. So that would stay as grass or green space. But if it was needed, they have the area to where they could add that parking in the future.
Would stay as an impervious or pervious.
It would be
surface.
pervious, yeah, and
Okay.
unless it was built, then it would become impervious. And also one other thing to mention that I forgot to do during the PowerPoint was as part of the traffic study, we had them explore what a commercial use would be on that site instead of a residential use. The traffic counts were about 2.5 times higher as a commercial use as a 30,000 square foot grocer as compared to this proposed development.
Mayor, do you mind if I chip in with a question? Is that all right? Thanks. Brett, so I see that in the proposed approval resolution, the first condition is that the applicant here would, if this gets approved, have to enter into agreements in the future. And then the fifth is that the site will have to be replatted to a single lot. Taken together, are you contemplating that there would be a development agreement, a subdivision agreement associated with this? I can't tell if
Yep.
there are many public improvements on the development site or if there are not too many.
Yeah, Madam Mayor and Council, there would, we do anticipate that there would be a development agreement as part of this. There are not many public improvements for it, but just general consistency with and intensity of this development itself. There'll also be separate agreements related to it should TIF be granted in the future that would have their own agreements, but I do anticipate a development agreement for this.
Thank you.
Will O'Keefe with Bader. Again, we're really excited about the opportunity to be here, to partner with the city of Rogers on this development and really try to, I think our guiding principle from the start with this has been to propose something that really aligned with the vision that the city has put forward for Main Street and really supplement and go along with what you all have, all the successes you have on Main Street right now. So I think that's our guiding principle, and we're really excited about the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Did you want to talk about this traffic study at all? Yes, Jim.
See a traffic study, you say, show the picture and show where the people are gonna come. How many there's gonna be Main Street.
It's on the, yeah, there is a traffic study online. If you want me to show you where that is. On the city council page, there is a link to it.
Good.
Mhm.
How many people? Acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that we have to all talk about, I think, further here. But I can show you after where to find it.
It's attached in the agenda outline.
Maybe I would ask one question. Matt, I know you took a look at the traffic. Could you just comment a little bit on, residential and kind of not just the volume, but the peaks in and out and when those occur and how that's different than different land uses, just to kind of give a flavor for what to expect here?
Yep, Madam Mayor, Commissioner Julie. My name is Matt Pacino with TC2. We were commissioned to conduct the traffic study. So the question is kind of just comparing trip generation. So I think what you can see up here from a trip generation perspective, this kind of shows that top right corner of the table it shows your AM peak hour, which is your typical 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, your PM peak hour, which is more of your 4:30 to 5:30 in the afternoon, and then your overall all daily. Residential multifamily is a relatively low generator from a perspective, and it's very consistent throughout the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? It's pretty consistent. So order of magnitude wise, right? I mean, we're talking 75 trips in the morning and close to 100 in the afternoon. I mean, that's 1.5 cars a minute. So it's not really, and it's not all at one time, right? It's not like a shift change or things like that. So it's spread out throughout the hour. And so the overall impact is really pretty negligible in the grand scheme of things. And that's why you can kind of see in the level of service table where it really only moves 1 or 2 seconds from a delay perspective. When you compare it to other land uses like we had mentioned, if you look at a grocery store or something like that on a 30,000 square foot, like an Aldi's or a Fresh Time, they're, similar to that, it is 2.5 times more trips, and those peaks are actually much, much greater with respect to that as well.
And I think the intersection that a lot of us were concerned about is John Deere and Main Street. How will that operate, particularly in the morning? I notice we have a lot of cars that are coming over the freeway They're taking the free right and heading down our main street. And I know Fletcher has a impact to that eventually. Hopefully it becomes better, but still, I would still expect a fair amount of traffic going south on our main street in the morning. Now we're gonna have a fair amount coming out, in the morning rush to work and stuff like that. Are you comfortable with the intersection, the operations there?
Yeah, I mean, from a industry standard perspective, level of service, queuing, the Fletcher bypass is certainly going to provide a significant benefit to downtown Rogers with respect to a shift in traffic volume. So you're going to get a lot of that cut through traffic, or vehicles that are traveling through today will relocate on the order of magnitude of 2,000 to 3,000 cars a day. And so when you think about that volume that's going to shift off of Main Street and over to County Road 81, that volume reduction is pretty significant when you compare that this site in total will generate only 1,000 trips. So with the Fletcher bypass and this development, the overall volumes are going to be less than what's out there today. And so operations will be at similar level or better. And so that's where I think when you look at that, from a operations perspective, it's going to work just fine. I think when you look at the John Deere extension and things like that, I think that has the opportunity to change travel patterns. I don't think it's necessarily going to draw more traffic to the intersection itself, but what it probably will likely do is add more volume to the west approach in particular, and kind of shift patterns. And that might drive the need for a traffic control change more into the future, but that's also consistent with the downtown master plan as well.
Yeah, and to be clear, I think we learned Fletcher is due to be constructed, finished by end of this year, 2026. So that's coming. I mean, it's in motion and happening. It's not, we're not depending on something that is still being planned. It's actually being constructed. So that's a good sign.
So I have a question about that. That 2,000 to 3,000 vehicles per day, is that all vehicles diverted? Like, is that number happening when Fletcher bypass is built, or is that a projection like in the future?
I would anticipate that diversion will happen almost instantaneous once it's constructed. So that's traffic that's there today that's making that maneuver. And so once that extension is in place, traffic kind of finds its way over time. So it'll take a little, a few months maybe, but it'll normalize pretty quickly.
And what drives that? It's just people not wanting to drive Main Street, or is there, until mapping's updated, right?
It's really comes down to where they're starting from and where they're going to, right? So, I mean, I think if you look at those motorists that are like on County Road 116, south of Fletcher, or kind of going in the reverse direction, right? And they're trying to either get to 94 or north on Highway 101. So it's that pattern, right? And the only really way to do that today is to come down Main Street. Yes, you could maybe go over to the east to the new Dayton interchange, but the data that we've already collected, right, kind of shows that that's just, the ones that are there are the ones that are going to shift. So.
Okay.
In your analysis, you took that into account. You reduced all that traffic and put it on Fletcher. So
That's correct. Yep. We accounted for the travel pattern
comfortable
shift.
with. Okay.
So today when I leave my house and go on 81, to go to 101, it's stopped right there because people are avoiding 94 going east. Is that going to still, I'm just trying to visualize, is that going to relieve traffic going that way? I mean, it's right now that's going that way is danger. It's not working, going east on 81. So I just, once Fletcher bypasses in the morning, once Fletcher bypass is done, is that going to immediately alleviate some of that blockage?
Like the queuing on John Deere that happens today.
Queuing on 81, like I come from Industrial Boulevard. So, and then heading towards east on 81 from there, it's backed up all the way to Industrial every morning because we're avoiding 94 going east. So when Fletcher bypass is done, and people are either taking Fletcher bypass or 101 going south, is that people are just gonna make a choice and go either way?
I don't, to be honest, I haven't looked in that in that much detail, but I don't know if it will change.
There's a lot of people already queuing there.
Correct, right. That pattern, you know, the Fletcher bypass isn't necessarily going to address that.
Yeah.
That pattern.
Yeah, our local roads suffer when 94 starts to break down. So that's nothing to do with this development, but it's one of our concerns here is our roads are pretty sensitive to particularly 94. And when everyone floods onto the local streets, developments like this are just adding more to the intersections. And I think that's kind of
Right,
what
I
you're
mean,
getting
I
at,
guess that's my
those
point,
concerns.
because the Civic Campus will also be right there.
Did this take into account the Civic Campus parking and like
We didn't look at the the new Civic Campus in particular as part of this.
I mean, I appreciate the expertise that a traffic study, I'm not the expert here. But we know what's happening on the ground because we're living it every day. And this is just where my concern is. It's just the amount of traffic we're putting in that corner today and then going down Main Street and on 81 and on 94, right in that corner. It's already a complete mess. And so approving something today that's going to add to it is concerning to me. So,
So I also have a question too, and I think I brought it up before and I'll bring it up again probably, but so doing traffic and pedestrian counts in December, like how does that compare to like a July or January or June or July kind of traffic? Because downtown's busier in the summer, right, versus winter.
I mean, we look at a number of different factors with respect to data, right? I mean, we're at the mercy of when we do collect data, but there is data that's collected throughout the year and we leverage and review various sources, right? To kind of just confirm that what we're seeing is realistic. And it's no different, like there are peaks and valleys, right? Whereas if there's a crash on 94 and it's backed up and that happens, it's just, that's the natural, and traffic's like water. It tends to work its way out. And I think, but what we want to try to do is if there's that reoccurring issue, that's where we want to make sure we address that. And that's where like one item that we identified was the, you know, the queuing that happens on John Deere and it kind of spills back into Main Street. Well, the Fletcher bypass will help alleviate that. Are there additional mitigation that could be added to make that even better? Sure, but that's, you know, something that it costs money in coordination with Hennepin County and other things like that. But just knowing that there are always solutions to those situations. It's just a matter of benefit, cost, and different things of that nature.
Did you say, Matt, the modeling did not include that west end extension of John Deere out to industrial?
We didn't look at that in particular, just from a timing perspective, that there was enough of an unknown of that. And so we
Okay.
didn't want to, we kind of wanted to actually look at it from a worst case perspective of all the traffic had to go
Yeah.
out to the east.
that makes sense.
Yeah, but ideally we get that connection put in there and that would only alleviate things, if anything, right? If
Correct. I think it would help balance traffic out
Yeah.
even.
You'd have a choice to go either direction there, so. Yeah, I know, I'm not an expert either, but I know what goes into this and the data collection and the projections, and you take into account the land use. And I guess I would just say our plan all along in this downtown area was development of some sort that's gonna generate traffic. And it's interesting to know this might be less than actually a commercial operation. So, well, it's the downside of development is the traffic that
Yeah.
comes with it. And so, you know, knowing enough about the projections, traffic engineers are generally in the right ballpark. So I appreciate that. And I know kind of the conservative assumptions go in. So I think for me, this was kind of what we wanted to see down there. There's some other general benefits of having so many rooftops down there for the other kind of development we wanted to support. I get the traffic part of it, but that's always going to be an issue. I do think if we could accomplish the connection on the west end, which I think is kind of under review right now, that would help things, and I think it would generally balance it out. So I don't know, that's just my 2 cents worth of where we're at.
Do you think, Amy? Got my 2 engineers here.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you got my feedback previously. I'd rather see different use there, but yeah.
fair.
I did have another question too. One of the things, talked about 1% growth rate was kind of the assumption or estimates were based on that between 26 and 28. Is that standard growth for our area is 1%?
If you're looking at overall growth rates of what we're going to see, obviously it's going to trickle down the more we grow. Because obviously that percentage gets smaller each time. Right now we're adding, last year we had 240 single family and townhome. It's about 2.5, roughly 500 people per year on it. Consistent besides 2024, which we all know is that kind of rocket year that we had. But what we've seen in this growth trend is kind of transitioned with all of the metro as a dip, and we're going to kind of stay probably back in our normal realm of that 200 single family. In terms of new multifamily, obviously it's kind of been spaced out where it is in the city, with the Asgard development being more on the north end. And then really all the multifamily that we've had recently, besides Duffy being on the south end, has been above north of 94. So 1% generally, I mean, that's fairly consistent, but it's all going to kind of change with where our growth patterns go to. As we all are aware, the Met Council has that wastewater plant that they're planning on the north, right by Crowhassan Park. And when that happens, our growth from single family and standpoint is probably going to shift more to that, and you're going to see a little bit more traffic on 144 to get to 101 that way. So 1% is probably generally fairly consistent, but it's probably going to start to shrink to less than that soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
We do have a couple council members trying to log in, so before we do any voting, we need to wait for them.
Madam Mayor and Council, just for a little more context on this, obviously we've had the TIF term sheet previously come before the council. Since that point, the developer and staff have had numerous continued conversations related to that piece. And one of the components that we are actively working on is a shift in how that's structured to where the city could potentially have the ability to pool 10% annually to go towards that John Deere to industrial connection. So this would be an avenue for us to collect funds via this development and increment to pay for that connection without having to do a general process or go out of our general levy. So that is something that is looking like it will be possible to do.
Mayor,
Yes.
I just wanted to point out procedurally, council members Brockman and Iden have been trying to join since 7 o'clock, and they've had issues with the Teams meeting, multiple invites.
I made it.
I think Mark is now just joining us now, and I don't know that we have Joel yet, but I just wanted to point that out since Mark was able to get through.
Hi, Mark, was that you?
Yep, I made her.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Are we gonna try to wait for Joel, or what do we want to do?
Up to you, Mayor. I think he's still trying, but I heard from him for a little bit here.
Mark, did you have any questions that you wanted to talk about while we're waiting for Joel?
If it's possible to summarize this traffic study.
Sure, we just,
Or did someone speak on that already?
we were just talking about it, but, did you have any specific questions you wanted to get answered?
Madam Mayor and Council, I can just kind of quick go through what I already went through. Mark on your screen, you'll see the different traffic study details, which was, and it was also attached to your packet. We got some intense feedback, but there
Top
is.
is mute.
He muted.
Are we good? Yeah, now we're good. Okay. Oh, we're not. What you see on your screen is the traffic study details. As you'll see, there's a pretty minimal impact. Better? Sounds better? Okay. So you'll see the few different intersection, and there's about a 1 to 2 second change or delay based on this, a total of 1,100 total daily trips. So the overall impact's fairly minimal. Level of service remains pretty consistent with each of the intersections that were included. And Mark, I think you kind of heard the John Deere to industrial connection that wasn't part of the traffic study, mostly due to unknown timing corresponding to that. We also had them look at what a commercial use of a 30,000 square foot grocer would look like in comparison to this, and it's about 2.5 times higher on a total daily trips. So generally speaking, the overall anticipated traffic impacts are not very severe. But
Right.
their consultant is here and then can answer detailed questions that you have. That's kind of a very high level.
Yeah, and that's what I understood. And I also like the creativity to try to move up the connection to industrial.
Anything else, Mark?
No, I think that's good for me.
If we don't have other questions and we're ready to vote, I think we can move on because we don't want to belabor this too long. Been waiting for 40 minutes. Yes. Sure.
There we go, sorry. Given that we're short, council member, is it possible for us to table for one more meeting or for a future meeting?
I'll lean to our parliamentary experts. I think.
Yeah, well, so Mayor and Council, as I understand it, Brett will correct me if I'm wrong. This request, formal approval is contemplated by the code. It's subject to 1599. So you have, in the normal course, you have 60 days to act on this type of request. Of course, you can extend that out for an additional 60 days. So there's no timing issue with tabling. And as far as whether in the normal course you do that when an applicant asks for it, I guess I'd defer to staff on that. Certainly, I don't think it's uncommon for you to agree with an applicant to table, but you're not compelled to do that. That's up to you. And were you to table, certainly tabling because you have an absent council member is an appropriate reason to table, should you want to do that.
Madam Mayor and Council, should you choose to do it, we do have time on our 60-day, and obviously we haven't done an extension yet, but regardless, it sounds like they would have been amenable to providing an additional extension anyway. But you do have time if you do want to go that route. But it is obviously, as City Attorney Vos mentioned, council discretion if you want to go that route.
I think it's fair based on our last vote, just to have everybody here. Anyone have any concerns about that? Just based on our current challenges from today. he
He's
hasn't
not
been
on.
able to- Yep.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine with tabling.
Okay.
Are you fine with tabling?
Just want to make sure we can
Yeah,
all be here.
Right. Do you need a motion?
Yep.
I'll move to table.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. Thank you. All right. We'll move on to 7.2, consideration of a preliminary plat, final plat, and site plan corresponding to this Rogers Civic Campus development at Industrial Boulevard and Main Street.
All right,
Good
Madam
evening.
Mayor and council members, as mentioned, this is the site plan and plat corresponding to the proposed civic campus, which is City Hall, council chambers, and police department. This is a former Boyer site, which the city acquired in late 2023. Total of 6 parcels, so 4 of which were the Boyer property. One of which was a former Holiday that has since been demoed that the city acquired in 2015. And then one of which was the former Main Street triplex, which was acquired in late 2023 and also has been demolished. In total, it has 4.35 acres in total size, zoned as downtown mixed use, guided as mixed use as well. Currently, it's vacant outside of just some city storage that's occurring in the former Boyer site. The proposed use, as mentioned, is City Hall, council chambers, and police department. The adjacent uses include commercial to the east and north, south, industrial and commercial, and the proposed development, which you just saw, and then to the west, grandfathered industrial. So the preliminary plat and final plat are both consistent. Essentially, what this would do is take the 6 parcels and combine it into one, making it straightforward and a uniform property to into the future. For the site plan itself, new City Hall, council chambers, and police department. And if you're looking at the screen, this area in this curve in where the red dot is where you go from 81 into Main Street, industrial on the top end. The proposed council chambers would be located facing Main Street, and then the primary City Hall facility, and then police department and their corresponding enclosed garage on the west side of the property. To the south, which would be the main entrance into the building, this is where you would have the primary parking for both City Hall and visitors of the police department. This would also be where the focal point would be of the post or non-peak city hours being used for district parking. On the west side, this would be the gated secured area for the police department, with additional parking stalls that would all be not open to the public. So this would be used for police purposes and secured purposes. The primary entrance would be on John Deere. This would be one main entrance point. So there is a right in, right out on Main Street, as well as secured access points for the police department onto Industrial and the second point on John Deere Lane. In total, most of the building is 1 story in height, except for the police department section, which is 2 stories in height, which you'll see in the future renderings. And as mentioned, the police would have a enclosed garage on the western side of their space. So in total, this site would exceed our parking code requirements with 138 total parking stalls, 51 of those in the secured gated area on the western side of the site, as well as 87 public stalls on the eastern side of the site. As mentioned, one of the components for the site plan was to ensure that we could create district-wide parking on non-peak hours. Obviously, the city uses very daytime traffic, so really looking at nights and weekends, being able to create additional parking to serve the overall commercial businesses in the area. So that would all connect via pedestrian connectivity and trails, which kind of correspond to the plaza space and would be able to go south. Looking at the landscaping, it's a mix of deciduous, coniferous, and ornamental trees really throughout the site, with a focal point along the north end, along where the stormwater pond is, as well as the south end, similar to what you saw with the last development proposal, putting a tree-lined area to create a really pedestrian-friendly corridor. Additional shrubs and grasses throughout. One of the components and what you probably saw in the conditions was really looking at the trees that are directly where the police department are, really trying to diversify the mix of trees that you see there for enhanced screening and for security purposes moving into the future. Overall, right now, the former Boyer site is almost entirely impervious surface, so the proposed design, similar to the last one you saw, is a reduction in total impervious surface. One of the components that was a key part of the master planning process for the overall Main Street district, as well as this site planning process, was creating a plaza space that could be utilized for the public. And that's really shown around where the council chambers would be located. This is not a activated plaza space, but more of a retreat type plaza space where people would have the opportunities to sit, and more of a green space integration into the overall Main Street area, and be a good kind of incorporation of that gateway feel we're really going for. So the internal build out's more just for informational purposes more than it is the site planning purposes, but as mentioned, council chambers would be on the eastern side with a conference room related to it. The main entrance being kind of right on the front east side or John Deere side, and then you go to where the front desk would be, and that would be where you would meet the various departments that would be located within this building, which would include community development, finance, admin. And then on the eastern side, and the building department would be located here. Western side would be the police department and IT. Then there's overall conference spaces throughout, but really looking at our design for both now and well into the future, designing this in a manner that can both incorporate our current needs, but then any potential demands for well into the future for the various departments. So there's quite a bit of exercises, which the council knows, looking at potential future staffing needs well into our growth years. So architecturally, very similar to what you heard me say for the last development proposal as well. Big focus on brick, being that kind of timeless piece that corresponds well with the overall surrounding businesses and different buildings throughout Main Street. So primarily brick, with the exception really being the police department garage, which should be tip-up paneling more as a cost measure, but still would overall meet that overall feel of what we're going for the entire district. Then separately, a fair amount of glazing throughout, which is AKA windows, and some metal accents as well. So here are some renderings, the one on the right being the potential plaza space, and the one on the left-hand side being, if you're looking at it from the Main Street, County Road 81 intersection. So the high windows area being more of where the council chambers would be. And one note, since it was asked during the planning commission process what this kind of bump out is in the wall, that's more of a future activation space if we want to look to break up that wall as part of the plaza. It's not an area that would be conducive to adding windows or anything like that. So really trying to incorporate some sort of future feature, which we haven't programmed yet, that's a future discussion, into the overall plaza. So this also went to the Planning Commission on February 2nd. No members, it was a public hearing due to the plat. There were no members of the public who spoke for or against the development. There's general support for it with a clarifying discussion on that item that was mentioned next to the plaza space, as well as a recommendation to add a identified space for if there's a public transaction, like a Facebook Marketplace transaction near the police department. So as you'll see in your resolution, there is a condition related to that. It's very easy to incorporate that recommendation into the overall plans for it. There's not a design change that's needed to do that. It's more of a signage and lighting item. In the end, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the proposed site plan. So there is a recommended action in front of you on the screen, and just to note, and it was noted with the planning commission as well, this is not voting on the actual funding of the proposed development. It's just purely corresponding to the site plan and plat. Obviously, there's numerous future discussions and actions that would be needed for the actual funding piece of it. So this is just the site plan piece. And with that, I can stand for any questions you have for staff, and obviously there's numerous other staff who have been very engaged in this project as well that can answer questions you may have for specific departments.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
This is all consistent with what we've been talking about and it's just a step in the process. right?
absolutely.
So,
Councilmember Iden, did you have anything? Oh, sorry, Amy.
Nope, go ahead, Mark.
Mark, did you have any questions or comments?
Did we lose him?
Lots of technical difficulties tonight.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, is this one that we could table as well for everyone to be here? Or do we want to vote on it tonight?
Mark is still on the meeting, you guys. He just is muted.
Okay.
So talk about how much all this costs.
We've been talking about it for quite a while.
Mhm.
As Director Angel just said, we will be talking about that, the final discussion on that multiple times after this, but we have been talking about that for a while. So this part is just the site plan and or the preliminary plat and final plat. So this is the separate part of the discussion. Yes, I'm going to introduce you to the website so you can look all this up. Okay. No, it's all very public and I will show you where to find it. Okay. Councilmember Iden, if you could come off mute, do you have any questions or comments? All right, with
Nope.
that, does
Well-
anyone,
So I don't know if it's really a question, but I still kind of want some explanation on like that right in, right out drive. Like, is it absolutely necessary? Because I'm not real fond of pedestrians crossing a driveway, but versus at intersections.
Yeah, Madam Mayor and Council, we looked at that right in, right out quite a bit, especially after the numerous different times that we've kind of looked at this and as part of the master planning process as well. We do feel that it will be very important for the overall flow of the development, one for the overall connectivity into it. Obviously, we want the parking to be well utilized post City Hall peak hours for people coming to whether it's our social or other businesses on Main Street. If there's additional barriers to entry to get to that parking lot, aka a few additional rights and the needed signage to get to it, the lower likelihood that it would be utilized in a manner consistent for that. So that's one piece of why we feel it is an important component to add that right in, right out. Also for the overall flow within, if you're just having that one access point, it could create pinch points within the just overall pure public area for it. So having that secondary access in and out of that parking lot will help things flow internally within it. But one of the avenues that we did want to, and we have looked to incorporate, especially through the master plan, was how does that street fully function? So this is in a manner, and depending on how the curbs are kind of built out, is this could be something that if the city's choosing to do an event at this location, we can shut that street down and still have it look cohesive as part of the plaza, but it still can, on a general day-to-day basis, be the right in, right out. From a city perspective, we would never want to see, and the county would also agree with this. Obviously, the county reviewed this because Main Street's currently a county road. Never want that to be a pure full access to have a left turn too. So right in, right out is going to slightly limit the number of vehicles. But from my professional experience, say it's important to keep that right in, right out for the overall flow. There are opportunities, depending on where people are coming from, to take other trails. So obviously, we talked about this as we do see John Deere as a potential future pedestrian corridor as well. And as those trails from the south end of John Deere connect onto Main Street, there will be opportunities for those entering the parking lot to also use those trails with less access points in between to still get to Main Street in the same manner.
Yeah, I'm thinking beyond that location. Oh, so continuing north, like that crossing over. Because I don't think the campus is like the final stop for everyone.
Yeah, Madam Mayor and Council. So it does have, well, right now we know those at Industrial and County Road 81. There are marked crosswalks with no crosswalk signs on it. Obviously, we want to improve that pedestrian connectivity into the future. The benefit of what we have right now for like the daytime use is a city campus isn't a high traffic generator. It's not one that's usually drawing in a lot of people, especially post-COVID times when less people are actually going into city halls. So there shouldn't be too much of a conflict from that perspective to it. But really, it's how do you get that connectivity? There's a lot more than just that one access point that would create a challenge to people going north, and we'll have to address those in the future. But I don't see that one access point being a big barrier for anyone to go north. Right now, there was one corresponding to where the triplex was, as well as the former Holiday had an access point. So it's a reduction in total access points directly in this vicinity. And that's one of the reasons too why we looked at the emergency vehicles and pushing those to the western side, eliminating the number of emergency vehicles going through, which would potentially have a higher impact and challenge with pedestrians going across the site. So this would be more of the general day-to-day traffic that a pedestrian would potentially look at. But I do feel that it's very necessary. I think that was a big
Okay.
component why we looked to acquire that triplex too, was to create that connection point into it. But obviously it's council's decision if you want to go a different route.
Yeah, it's just currently there are pedestrians that cross beyond, like up towards CVS and beyond to the north side from the south. And I just see is like the right hand, people tend not to stop like they do at an intersection as easily for pedestrians when it's a right in, but that's my only concern. And it would be evening use as well, not just civic campus use if it's for parking at night. But if I'm in the minority in those concerns, I can move on from it.
I certainly agree. I mean, anytime you have a free movement like that and a pedestrian crossing, it's a concern, but you have that in a lot of places, ramps on the freeways and everything. And so it happens, and it's just a matter of doing the best with it you can. It's usually a matter of signing, and if you can pull the pedestrian location crossing back a bit to get the best sight lines you can. But it's a legit concern. I agree though, from a traffic flow standpoint, right in, right out is beneficial to the site. And so I think it's a matter of trying to balance the peds, but I don't disagree with you, but they're beneficial to the overall site.
Okay. Yep, that's.
Still on.
I think Mark should be able to
Mark, any questions or comments before we vote?
He on there, Steve?
He is.
Okay.
He's muted.
There we go. I was talking to myself. Yeah, I think we all share concern for pedestrians, but I think it's designed well, and like you said, Kevin, we'll be looking at this further to do what we can to whatever moves we can make there to make it more visible and conducive. I mean, there's when you look down Main Street, there's a lot of driveways, and it's really no different, and we just have to be smart about it.
And just for the record, from the earlier question, it was the October 14th meeting that we did approve a construction manager at risk. So there are some details in that meeting if you want to look at it online, which does give an estimate, and there are some more details that you can look up. All right. Any other comments, questions? We want to vote?
Do you need a motion here or what do you need?
I'll move to approve resolution 2026-11.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. We have no other business, correspondence, and reports are online, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.